Hello everybody, thanks for tuning into the show. Today's the first in a series with Viv Buckland. We're talking about beliefs. My name's Chris Sutton, this is Mental Conversations. I'm unsure I can be so absent-minded. Boom, and we're live. So I'm looking at the happy smiley face of Viv Buckland. Viv, thank you for being on the show.
You're very welcome. It's nice to speak to you again.
Yeah, I'm truly excited. I couldn't be more excited if I was twins about this, because we're about to embark on like an 8-month journey together. Journey's my least favorite word, talking about mental health, and I've said it in the first few seconds. But where we're going to look at different aspects of mental health. So people will get used to hearing our voices over the next 8 months, and hopefully we'll learn.
They will. I'm looking at it more as a magical mystery tour.
There we go. I prefer that to journey. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris Sutton, and I have lived experience with mental health, living with anxiety and having lived through depression. And that's the reason I do this podcast, is to try and put some positive stuff out there about what I've learned. So that's me. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Viv.
Okay, I'm a senior leader in a local authority in Leeds, and also I do some coaching and training in NLP, and I combine all of those things together pretty well every day. Oh, well, apart from the council stuff, clearly, because I save weekends to not do that.
Yeah, it's for those people who are listening that don't know Viv. I mean, you've been on my podcast before a few times, but you're the one person in my life that I've genuinely heard 4 different people say, when I grow up, I want to be like Viv.
It's so sad.
So
the notion that the world would benefit from more than one of me is a very sad thought.
but what a compliment, completely away from your ears that people would say that. So I think we got quite a good mix of me being stupid and you being quite knowledgeable. So there may be some stuff we can put out there.
I'm not sure it goes that way around. Anyway, let's see where the conversation
goes. We'll see where it goes. And that, I mean, actually, that may be a belief. That may be our beliefs. And, this is it, chapter 1. We're going to be talking about beliefs today, and how the different ways that we can look at things, our own beliefs, can actually change our perspective and potentially the way we look at ourselves, and hopefully with a view to being happier with who we are or making some mindset changes. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to tell you a story to start with.
I love a good story. Go for it.
So it's a true story. And this is where I'm not sure if I've done this retrospectively, and I've changed my view of when I started realizing that beliefs aren't necessarily true. But it's a good origin story. So I was driving along the motorway with an ex-girlfriend of mine. I'm going to highlight the word ex there. And we saw there was some roadkill on the side of the road, and she was a vegetarian.
Nice.
Yeah. And she said to me, "Oh, Chris, what was that?" And I said, I was like, I don't want to get into a big conversation about this, like about that someone's hit this poor animal, and it was a badger. So I said to her, "Oh, it was a carrier bag," and I thought that would just let the conversation go. And she turned around. She was like, "Chris, it wasn't a carrier bag, was it? What was it?" And I said, "No. It was a carrier bag." And she started getting a bit angry. And she was like, "Chris, look, just tell me what it was." And I said, "Okay, it was a badger." And she got really irate. And she was just like, I was like, "What?" She got really irate, and she went, "Chris, just tell me what it was." And I got a bit confused at this point, and I looked over to her and I said, "Well, it was a badger. It was dead. It was a dead badger, but it was definitely dead, and it was definitely a badger." And she said, "Chris, everyone knows that badgers are mystical creatures." And my jaw just hit the floor and was like, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, if they are real, we don't get them in Scotland." Like, so anyway, so we went off.
Yeah,
so we had this big conversation where I said, "No, they actually do exist." But it really got me thinking about the fact that was a belief of hers for whatever reason. Maybe she'd only ever seen a puppet badger, or maybe I don't know where it came from, but for some reason her belief, she would swear until she was blue in the face that badgers weren't real creatures. And it just got me thinking, well, what other things do we think? Not only about like silly things like whether badgers are real, but about ourselves and about our opinion of ourselves that actually might not be true. Um, yeah,
Lots and lots of things in my experience. Lots of things. In fact, I mean, when I think about beliefs, they're the rules that you run your life by. But they're strange rules because you're not necessarily aware they're even there. And I can get why a badger might be a mystical creature. You know, if the only experience of a badger is wind in the willows, right, and you've
yeah,
got this toad who lives in a hall and drives a car really fast, we're going to wonder whether a badger's like a real thing or a not real thing. And I got into the habit of talking about beliefs with people, not religious beliefs, just beliefs, day-to-day beliefs,
yeah,
and got caught out with someone saying, no, but yes, of course my beliefs are true. Oh, had you not realized they're not always true? And was greeted with surprise. And actually, they either limit us or enable us to do things. And actually, they're just present so much of the time. And yet people aren't really aware that they've even got them. In fact, they don't even recognize when they've expressed a belief quite often. They think they've
yeah,
expressed a fact, and they're fascinating, especially when you learn to listen for them. And you go, oh, that's what you believe, is it?
yeah, yeah. It's really it's such an interesting subject because I think like what you've just hit on there straight off is that awareness, and like if you're not aware of it, I'm definitely, oh, God, this is my word, I was gonna say I'm definitely guilty of that, but like that's definitely I can't, but like I don't know how old I was, I don't know how many years I lived thinking that my beliefs were fact, and thinking, and again, let's just be very clear, we're talking just day-to-day beliefs here about things.
That's right, yeah.
I can't do that, I don't have the skill for that, I'm not able to learn to do that, or really damaging things like I'm rubbish, or I don't deserve to be here, or everyone's
Yeah.
better than me, and all this kind of negative self-talk, if you really get into the mental health side of it. And you kind of, the more you say it to yourself, and it may even have been you that told me this, anytime you think something, your brain can't differentiate between you thinking it and someone saying it to you. And every time you say something or hear something, it gets more and more reinforced into that belief. But that's all it is a belief. It's not a fact. And the fact,
No, there's loads of different types of beliefs, and beliefs that are actually genuinely true are what I would describe as facts. The fact that we're talking to each other right now and recording something. Yeah, okay, I would accept that as a fact. And then we could come into the conversation holding the belief that as people listen to this, it'll make a positive impact and that it's worthwhile. And that might lead us down one conversation route. And I would describe that as an empowering belief. It's a belief that leads you to do something with purpose. And then you've got limiting beliefs. And a limiting belief might be, well, we're recording this, but nobody will ever listen to it. Because why would anybody listen to us having a conversation about beliefs? That's just a ridiculous thought, isn't it? Because, and the limitation would be, well, actually, why would we continue? Why would we do that? So the empowering belief is actually through doing this, there will be other people out there that connect with the story and go, do you know what? I'd never thought my beliefs weren't always true. Or that you can change your belief and that you can change your belief from limiting to empowering really easily. People say, can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And I accept that it's quite hard to change that in some ways. But one really easy thing to do is to say, can't do that yet.
yes,
Because
I
yet
like that.
opens that possibility that it's still something that could happen in the future.
Yeah.
And then in NLP, we have convenient beliefs, things that we actively choose to believe because we're interested in what happens differently if you behave that way.
So
So beliefs you can play with and do stuff with.
like what? Sorry, that lost. So convenient beliefs, like
Convenient beliefs.
yeah.
Things like every behavior has a positive intention.
Right.
Now, there's a bit of me that when I first heard that wanted to rebel and go, don't be ridiculous. What about a murderer? There's no positive intention in that. But actually, when your unconscious mind runs a habit or an action, it's dealing with the best resources it has available to it at the time in order to do something usually quite protective for you. So when somebody commits what we look at as an act that thinks, well, that was a pretty negative act, what's the person getting from it? So if every behavior has a positive intention, what was the unconscious mind's positive protective intention that it had in doing that thing? And if you were to look at that as being the best resource that person had available, rather than being angry or upset or hurt by whatever it was that had just been said or happened, actually, you'd be more curious about what were they trying to achieve? They didn't do it that well, but what were they trying to achieve that was a really positive intention? And actually, convenient beliefs like that, especially when you're coaching and talking to people who have a lot of limiting beliefs, really help. They're things that you actively know you're choosing to believe.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it's interesting because the way that you do actually process these things yourself massively impacts on your on you mentally, like how much pressure you feel under, how much happiness you allow yourself to feel, or because if you're constantly having that kind of those doubts or all of your beliefs are about something you're unable to do. We've been talking the last couple of days about about a work thing of me running a big Zoom conference, big conference via Zoom.
Yeah.
And my first thing was I use Zoom quite a lot for the podcast, but I've never used it to be the organizer of an event, to be the administrator of this big thing. I can't do that. And actually, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because actually, over the last few days, through practicing with colleagues, through actually looking through some videos on like how to, there'll still be a level of anxiety when the actual event comes around. But now
there will, now that you've told yourself there will be, of course.
Yeah.
But you could choose not to believe that.
Damn it. You'd be interested. It is a bit interesting. Let's unpick that a bit though, because the interesting thing about that is that I think my mindset is always to look at things in a kind of, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but I look at it in a kind of, let's be cautious, because then I could be pleasantly surprised, but I'll be ready if it goes wrong. I'll be ready for the bump won't be as hard because I'll have thought about what happens if it goes wrong. But if you were to say to me, what's your belief in like, how is it going to go? I would say if I had to like put money on it, I'd be like, oh, it's going to be fine. So I'm quite positive about it, but I'm guarded to being really like, yeah, it's just going to be fine. It's going to be absolutely fine. And I think it's about kind of being, if you're really prepared for something, if you prepare the best you can, then, you're in a good position to succeed.
And I think sometimes people will ask me a question about, well, is that not just positive thinking? And actually, I think you've highlighted the difference, really. If it's just positive thinking, that's wishing for the best without action. That's hoping for the best. It's telling yourself it's going to be great, it's going to be great, it's going to be great, but not actually doing anything about it. That's positive thinking. And it's good to think positively. But if the only thing that you do is give it positive thought, that in itself is not quite enough. So when you're saying, actually, I take the approach of, okay, how do I need to prepare for this in order for it to be a really great event? Then that's taking the action steps towards the belief that's going to be a really great event. The belief in itself is empowering, but it's not enough. You do need to take action steps for it to become true. And then there's that. So what's the emotion that you're associating with the preparation? Is it excitement or anxiety? Is it an emotion that helps you, or an emotion that's driven through fear? Because that just alters the way that you feel about it.
Oh, can I tell you this then? Because this goes really hand in hand.
You can tell me anything, Chris.
Right. So yesterday, so talking about that belief about my ability to like administer this thing, it's quite a good example. I had a session with a few colleagues, and I practiced on this system. I mean, it happened to be Zoom, and so I practiced on Zoom, putting people in breakout rooms and bringing them back again, and what if someone's stuck in the lobby, and all these different things, right? That we've had to kind of, this COVID world that we're in at the minute, that we over the last year and a bit have been really important to pick up these kind of skills. I just haven't had to do it yet.
Yeah, great to practice.
So I practiced and spoke to these, and I was like, actually, I feel more confident about that now. So my belief was shifting, and then I had a meeting with a couple of other people who were more experienced in it, and I was asking them about some of the potential pitfalls, and they reeled off these kind of list of pitfalls, and by the end of the day, I was a shell of myself again. I went from being a shell in the morning and thinking I can't do this, to then at lunchtime thinking, oh, actually, I think I'm going to be all right with this. And I remember feeling buoyed and feeling like, the clouds had lifted, and then all it took was a few seeds of doubt, and I was like, boom, straight back down there in the I can't do this doldrums. And I was like, that's so interesting, because the same thing is going to happen. The event is going to happen. My preparation, I'm going to still do the best preparation I can, but I'm so guided and influenced by what other people's views have been, that it's an emotional, when you attach to it, your roller coaster emotionally is intense.
And emotions feel like things that we can't control. I mean, we've got more control over them than we imagine that we have, or we have once we get into the practice of how you do that. So starting with the belief that I can't do that will lead some people to give up before they start, and that's why we say it's limiting. Or it'll make you look for the pitfalls. So it's interesting that what you asked for were, so tell me about some of the pitfalls. Because the other question that you could have asked, well, tell me about other opportunities, and whether or not they'd have given you more opportunities. So what we say and how we say it, even the small things, make quite a big difference to how we end up believing things and feeling about things. And as human beings, we appear to all be a little bit into self-harm in the way we speak to ourselves. I don't mean physical self-harm, but in the way that we speak to ourselves. So if I'm talking to people about giving advice to a friend in the same situation, they're always able to do that. And yet when you ask them about whether they would speak to a friend the way that they speak to themselves, they go, no. And you realize how unkind we are to ourselves sometimes in the beating up of I can't do this and I'm rubbish at that, and they're all beliefs that we just repeat to ourselves. And then the other thing about beliefs, I mean, apart from being the way that we operate, it's one of the filters. So as you experience the world, whatever the event is in the world, we have to filter out a lot of the information through the unconscious mind, because there's too much information going on for the conscious mind to be able to deal with. Conscious mind is really rational, processing part of you. So it can only deal with 7 plus or minus 2 bits of information at once. But the event that's taking place is significantly more than that. So the unconscious drops it all through a set of filters and picks out the bits and gives the bits back to the conscious mind, which the conscious mind then thinks is reality. It's actually only a bit of reality, but it's the one that it thinks. So beliefs, coming back to beliefs are one of those filters. If you believe you can't, you look for the evidence. If you believe you can, you look for the evidence. Kind of like the difference between asking about the pitfalls and the opportunities.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, because you can, as soon as you were saying that about the difference between the pitfalls and the opportunities, which are essentially the same thing, in terms of my example, which was one of the pitfalls, just, because it's something people will be aware of, it's good to bring it to life. I asked about the pitfalls, and one of them said, at the beginning of a meeting, if you've got lots of people, that when they come onto a Zoom call, they'll all be talking. They have to individually mute their own mics. So if you've got 100 people, some of them are going to forget. And we've had events before where people have come on and they've been swearing to someone in the background, and there's like 50 people listening to that, and you're like, oh, excuse me, Jane, can you turn your microphone off, please? Like, and and you get, and so they were like, oh my god, and that is a nightmare. That is an absolute nightmare. So I was like, oh, and I was like, can you do something about that? And they said, yeah, you can mute participants before they, when they enter, they're automatically muted. Now, in what you're saying there, it's like, if I'd said, is there any good tips you could give me? The framing it in that sense would have been, oh, actually, yeah, mute their mics, because, and then that would have been a funny anecdote rather than of something that you're going to miss, rather than make sure you do that because it's a nightmare. Like, so, but
then you're expecting a nightmare, and of course, actually, what it's going to be is a really great event, because the event's going to be the event.
Yeah,
it's only how you feel about it that's different for you at the moment.
And when I actually went into the kind of settings thing, it's a button. It's a
it was
tick,
really easy.
It's tick, mute mic. I was like, right, okay. Well, I had a real panic about that for about 30 seconds, and then was like, write that down. Right, I need to make sure I don't do that. So but the whole thing drags you through, and this is where it gets into like the mental health aspect of it. It gives me a headache, literally. You know this from knowing me personally.
That's quite common, yeah.
When I get stressed, my shoulders are tense, and I wake up
migraine.
the next morning, I've not slept well, and I've got a headache behind my eyes, and I'm like, and it's all about what I've believed, what I've kind of lived through the day previous. So it's interesting that I kind of inadvertently go towards the negative rather than going right there, and you've talked to me about positive self-talk a lot before, about reframing, don't touch the fireplace, reframing it as keep your hands away from the fire, if you're talking to a child. So that can be something that people can do, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of things that you can do. And kind of coming back to the beginning of the conversation a little bit, people don't really think about beliefs. They think that beliefs are something associated with religion, and of course they are. And you have far, far more beliefs than that just run your everyday life. And being aware of some of those beliefs, catching yourself out. You don't need somebody else to do it. You just catch yourself out when you're saying to yourself, I can't do that. That's never going to go right. Well, okay, so then your unconscious mind's gone, oh, okay, it's not going to go right. Right, I better make sure that happens then. And so it does. In NLP, we talk about something that's kind of quite connected to this, about results and reasons. And whichever side of that equation you're on, you're right. So when you're looking to achieve something, you'll either achieve the results that you're looking for and that you wanted to get, or you'll have a set of reasons that you give yourself for why it didn't happen, and then you'll believe them. And whichever you choose to do, you're right. And it's whether or not you're on the side of life where you realize and are aware that you have choices, or whether you're on the side of life where you believe that everything is being done to you and happening to you, and that you have no choices. And so the beliefs are really important about which side of life you feel that you're on.
I like the way you put that in terms of the choices, because I've heard kind of not mental health professional type people, but I've heard people, so friends, describing it as, I can't control. They use this word control all the time. And actually, quite often you're not in a position to control something, but there are choices you can make, and there are, and again, and choices can be really, making a minor choice can make a big impact on your life. So, like, I like that as you go through the day, trying to catch yourself. And I think especially if you find yourself in a kind of funk, and you're feeling really uncertain or negative about something, is to try and create that awareness within you, just to have a think about it. Is there a different way I can look at this? Are there some other choices I can make that will change this?
Yeah, I was talking to a coachee recently, where she was feeling in a very difficult position and not sure what to do next, and feeling, I think I'm reaching the point of breakdown. I don't seem to be able to, I can't find a way through. I don't know what to do next. So I'm not one for choosing somebody else's route. There's more than one right answer to things, and my right answer is not your right answer. And that's right, because the skills and abilities and weaknesses that I have are not the same as the ones that you have, and therefore we wouldn't have the same right answer to things. So what we did was we drew up a list of possible options, and initially there didn't seem to be too many options that she could describe. And then as we made light of it a little more and fun of it and tested the extremes of it, the options list got bigger and bigger and bigger. And as soon as she realized there was more options than she believed in, and that she was free to say any option she wanted to, and that was okay, because we were going to scratch some of these off the list. We were working out consequences. The option list got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's interesting that once you realize that you have choices, then your ability to create more choices becomes easier. And then it's just a case of going, okay, well, I wouldn't accept all of these choices. I wouldn't choose all of these things because I don't like the consequences that go with some of them.
Yeah.
So then it's a weighing of, well, which consequences are you happy with and which consequences are you not? And then, and which ones, what's the worst thing that can happen? And the worst thing that could happen would be just having a breakdown. It's okay. Which of the choices are you prepared to do before the breakdown? And which of these would you only be prepared to do after a breakdown? And that really began to distill things that hadn't appeared as choices before, but then became something that became options.
Yeah.
So how we talk to ourselves about what we believe is possible and not possible is really very important.
It is. And also in terms of like, if your ultimate goal, so this is like a personal thing to me. So I went in my kind of magical mystery tour, rather than journey, has been through mental health, through, from depression and forwards, has been kind of, it's been really challenging in kind of trying to work out what is it I'm trying to achieve. And I set out with a load of kind of very tangible things I was trying to achieve, and then realized as I was making my way through, I still felt the same. So I wasn't kind of doing anything about that anxiety that I'd struggle with. It was the anxiety has never gone away, still hasn't. And it may be less often, but when it hits, it's kind of can be quite debilitating. So some time ago, I changed my mindset and the choices I was trying to make towards how can I focus on that anxiety. And when I come through periods of, if I'm like, if I come to a period where there's a lot of anxiety within my world, what do I do about it? And what techniques can I use to actually alleviate that? So that's a shift in mindset, and it does help, because there are now some things that I make sure I do, to like drink a bit less coffee, or because I know it gets me really wired, or make sure I do some exercise because that actually helps me sleep, and things like that actually are practical things you can do about your internal processes.
Yeah, and I remember having a short conversation with you about how you described your anxiety, because coming back to some of the NLP stuff, we have skills and abilities, and those affect our behavior, our results in the world. But beneath the skills and abilities, we have beliefs, and beliefs are like an on-off switch as to whether or not you use that skill. If you believe you can't, you won't, and if you believe you can, you do. And sitting underneath that, you've kind of got values and then personality. So at your core, you've got those strongly held things that are very, very important, you're very attached to, and personality traits. And so one of the things that I remember saying to you is, can you stop saying that you're an anxious person? Can you stop saying I am anxious? Because that's a real identity statement. Would it be all right for you to say, I'm Chris and I'm just awesomely good at doing the process of being anxious or feeling anxious? Because you are awesomely good.
Thank you.
Feeling anxious. If ever I wanted a lesson in how to do anxiety, I'd come and say, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to do it so that I can be as good at it as you. But you're a person who does anxiety really well.
Yeah.
You're not an anxious person.
No, I mean, you might have
I'm beginning
noticed.
to separate that. Yeah.
It was funny because as I came to that part of the sentence I was saying, I was like, no, don't say that.
She's
Like,
gonna get me.
no, but actually, it was more. It was yes, because you're actually physically you're there and I'm talking to you, but I have started changing my language around it. But I started tripping myself up while I was thinking about it, going, hang on, what is it? How do I word this? Like, but that in itself is good because it's like it's a step, isn't it? It's a step. I remember
It is.
I've said 1,000
It's
times to people, I might as well have said to people, walk into a room, meet someone for the first time and say, oh, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a worrier. I worry about things. It was like so ingrained in my personality that it was kind of
It is. And just
tell
changing the
people.
language around that first step to say, it's not your personality, it's not you, it's not your identity. It's a behavior that you're awesomely good at. You've run the habit ever such a long time. You're really well practiced. You've practiced in every conceivable situation. And as a result, you are an expert in anxiety. It's not who you are.
No.
It's just a habit that you run.
Yeah, it's
And I know
interesting.
it's a habit that's debilitating, but it's the first step in going, actually, do I have to have this habit? Is there a different one?
Yeah. And actually, do you know what? It's actually a good place for us to stop this to end this episode because our second episode which will be out in a few weeks' time, is around anxiety. So maybe
right.
we'll pick this up then. Yeah, people won't know
And
this,
people will think we've planned at this rate. So,
it's funny because I know what we're going to talk about and you don't. So it's
that's true. It's a
so
revelation to me. That's why I think it's a magical mystery tour, because I have got no idea what each episode's going to be about. And that's lovely. I'm all right with that.
It's good. The whole point is let's have a mental conversation about it. So look, thanks Viv for being on the show again.
It's been great to talk to you.
And thanks you guys out there for listening. Please tell people about the podcast, share it wherever you can so that more people listen to it. And another episode will be winging its way to you soon. Thanks everyone.